Welcome to Brownfield's Next Gen podcast, where the future of agriculture gets a voice. This is your stop for real-world wisdom, fresh perspectives, and straight-shooting conversations that address some of the biggest challenges facing the next generation of farmers and ranchers. From planting to big-picture profits, we talk to the experts and dig into the tools, trends, and tough decisions shaping your operation and your legacy. Now, here are your hosts, Erin Anderson and Kellan Heavican.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Anderson with Kellan Heavican. Welcome to the Next Gen podcast on Brownfield.
Thanks, Erin. This week, we're honored to be joined by Richard Fordyce, the Under Secretary at USDA for Farm Production and Conservation. Mr. Undersecretary, thanks so much for being with us this week.
Absolutely, Kellan. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, obviously, we've heard stories from the next generation of ag producers. We've covered some succession planning, and now we're kind of diving into a section on the podcast about policy and how policy is helping the next generation get started, but also where does policy maybe need to evolve down the road to kind of meet the needs. So, Mr. Undersecretary, let's start here. So when you look at the next generation of ag producers, and obviously you're a Missouri farmer yourself, what are you hearing from the next generation as some of the things as they're trying to walk through and navigate how to get started?
Well, Kellan, I think that's a great question, and I might even go back a little further back from where kind of the journey of young agriculturalists and where their passion starts from. In a lot of cases, I think their interest in production agriculture and being a farmer or a rancher, comes from a lot of different places. I think we've got thousands and thousands of new and younger producers that grew up on a farm or grew up on a ranch, but we also have others that maybe are a generation or two removed from the farm. They maybe remember going to grandpa's farm or a friend or a neighbor, but that passion was in them to be a farmer or to be a rancher. And I think, programs like 4-H and FFA, certainly are, they're both great programs that, continue to feed that passion and inform that passion. And so I think by the time, either they're finished with high school or they're finished with, college education or a trade school or, an associate's degree in agriculture, I think we as, and now I'm that next generation. I think, we need to do all we can to help and to assist. And I do get the opportunity to visit with a lot of young farmers and young ranchers through whether that's a leadership program that commodity organizations have sponsored or, Farm Bureau does a really good job with, young farmers and ranchers program. And the conversations that I have with them are fascinating because, and the reason I say they're fascinating, it's because I remember when I was a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old farmer. And I remember, from my very first memory, that's what I always wanted to be. And I've got some stories, we won't go into those today. But what I do a lot of times now that I'm the age that I am now and actually sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in now is I think back to what was I thinking about when I was 21 and what was I informed about when I was, a new farmer. And what is so fascinating is this crop of young farmers and ranchers are amazing. Their ability to digest, understand, and articulate policy, obviously being up on, the newest technologies, which I think is I think that's another topic, right? They can use a lot of these new technologies, precision agriculture and other things, in a way that some of us, again, my age, sometimes struggle a bit with. And so I am not one bit worried or concerned that the young farmers and ranchers of this country are not 100% equipped with the passion, the knowledge, the involvement that is needed to be successful. And in those conversations, what I find is that the barriers are access to land and access to capital, either to secure that land, or if they do have an arrangement where land is not the barrier, access to capital. Because, we all know the capital requirements to farm these days is not insignificant. Um, and so, I think that whether it's, within our mission area at Farm Production and Conservation, whether that's our loan programs, our conservation programs, disaster response programs, safety net, I think that, at least we can provide some tools that can maybe help mitigate that to some degree.
Mr. Undersecretary, you mentioned a couple of those programs that you offer over there at USDA. What are some of the most overlooked programs, or maybe some that young producers or young farmers may not be as familiar with?
Well, I think the big one, honestly, Aaron, is our loan programs, right? Congress has actually mandated that either, depending on operating loans or farm ownership loans, and these are direct loans, the loans that FSA provides, and we have an amazing guaranteed loan program where we actually guarantee the loan with a commercial lender. Um, but Congress actually says you will use a certain percentage of these dollars to loan money for buying a farm, operating a farm, buying cows, buying equipment to new and beginning farmers. And so I believe that FSA, and that's where the loan programs reside, is with the Farm Service Agency. I believe those loan programs can be a catalyst to start. And I will share that the first farm I bought, and I'll even tell you what year it was. It was 1987. The first farm I bought was financed through, at that time, the Farmers Home Administration, before the loan programs merged in with the farm programs to create FSA. And I couldn't have purchased that farm had it not been for that farm ownership loan through the precursor to the loan programs we have today. And I think if anyone were advising a young farmer, young rancher, about how to secure credit or capital to support their farming operation, if they're not telling them the first stop you need to make is FSA, then they're probably not getting good advice. Um, because again, our agency, the Farm Service Agency, and again with the other agencies within the mission area, have programs and have directives, frankly, to support new and beginning farmers.
You mentioned the year that that you purchased your first farm in the 80s, and we know, and the reason why I think that's interesting is because we know about the 80s farm crisis, and we look at the ag economy here right now. And so as producers are trying to navigate, the ag economy, how do USDA loan programs help producers enter a time in which commercial lending offices may say, "Whoa, there's a lot of risk here. I don't know that this may not be something we're interested in." So, how does USDA help kind of bridge that gap when the economic times are not very certain?
Great question, Kellen, and I would say that and we have great commercial lending partners, and I probably shouldn't name them. That's probably not. pro- I wouldn't want to advertise for one over another, but we do have great commercial lending partners. We meet with them. I met with the American Bankers Association, the ag lending side of that, the other day here in Washington. And they couldn't have been more complimentary on the guaranteed piece that we provide to the commercial lender. But I think what we can bring to the table, as well as those commercial lenders through a guaranteed program, is understanding certainly the finances and the budgets of production agriculture, but I also think understanding the programs, the Farm Bill programs, the potentially ad hoc programs. We just finished up the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program. And, I think that ag lenders, whether that's FSA loan officers or whether that's that commercial piece of it as well, have a really strong understanding of how does a conventional farming budget, whether that's on the crop side or the livestock side, how does that work? Um, offering counseling and ideas and suggestions about how you might be able to be a bit more profitable or make that profit and loss statement look better if you consider this, or have you considered this? And not being the gatekeeper to capital, but being a partner with the borrower, I think is a really important distinction to make. And we have meetings, or the Farm Service Agency administrator and other leadership, even here at the undersecretary's level. We have meetings with the farm loan folks within FSA, and we have meetings with commercial lenders to help them understand what the impact is of federal farm programs, the opportunities, and then we haven't even talked about like risk management and those types of things through RMA. But in the One Big Beautiful Bill, there was a designation, surrounding crop insurance, and also some of the livestock products that are offered through RMA, that previous to the passage of the bill, you had a 5-year time period where you had a special designation. You had access to these risk management tools through RMA, crop insurance, livestock products as well, with a reduction in premiums. So you were paying a lower premium than your counterparts that were no longer defined as new and beginning farmers. And that designation was for 5 years. The legislation that passed in July, the One Big Beautiful Bill, extends that designation to 10 years. And so whether it's risk management, whether it's access to capital, certainly the safety net programs, ARC and PLC, the ad hoc programs, Farmer Bridge Assistance, obviously are available to new and beginning farmers, as they are to all farmers in the country. And so I think when you think about USDA and what the opportunities are that support new and beginning farmers, not only does USDA prioritize that, but I think Congress over the last decade and a half, I think they've been laser focused on making provisions within, the law of the land, which is the Farm Bill, or the One Big Beautiful Bill that passed in July, um, making it a priority to create some opportunities for new and beginning farmers.
We've talked about risk management now, access to capital. I also want to talk about access to land as well. What are some of the programs, maybe what USDA is doing to help the next generation address land acquisition, for that next generation, maybe from those retiring producers as well?
Yeah, so the one program I think that comes to mind, and this would I love the program, but I don't know that it's available just everywhere, or this relationship would exist, in every county. But we do have what they call the CRP TIP program, Transition Incentive Program, and it's frankly, I think it's brilliant. But you have to find a producer or a farmer who has an expiring CRP contract that a new and beginning farmer would like to operate and farm. And so if that contract is expiring and the contract holder, so the person that has the acres, that has the CRP contract on it, if they either sell or lease that land to a new and beginning farmer, they get what is called a transition incentive payment, which is 2 more years of the CRP payment after the contract expires. But they have to either sell it or lease it to a new and beginning farmer. There have been other programs that have been, uh, communicated, talked about. Some, I think some have worked better than others. There used to be a farmer, um, and I don't know if it still exists, and it was partially USDA. It was also partially state departments of agriculture that had basically a connection system where you had a retiring farmer who didn't have an heir, or didn't have someone in the family, or maybe even a neighbor that was interested in taking over the farm, and you would connect that farmer with the new and beginning farmer. And I honestly, Aaron, I don't know if that program still exists. And again, in these kind of transition programs, or linking retiring farmers with new and beginning farmers, it's going to work. It's going to be available. Where it works, right? Where that opportunity exists. And, if there's one thing that I would say is, maybe falls a little short, is that it has to be the right situation. But I would tell you that, finding the farm, or finding a farm, and sometimes is a matter of timing, and it's a matter of research, and it's a matter of sometimes patience, right? But once that farm's identified, I think that that's where we can really, really support, as we've talked about already, whether that's the access to capital, and that sort of thing. I think the land piece is a harder one.
We're talking about programs to get producers started. I want to take it maybe a step further down the system. We hear the word technical assistance with programs being used all the time. So once maybe producers have an idea, okay, this is the program, I've applied for it. What type of assistance do these programs provide producers who are continuing to work through and get it? Like, what does the next couple of steps look like, and what are some things that producers should know when they sign up for these programs?
Yeah, that's another great question. And I think technical assistance, I think we typically think about technical assistance kind of in that conservation space, because that truly is, one of the primary things that, for example, NRCS does when it comes to conservation. But there's technical assistance really across the board. We offer some programs on financial or borrowing literacy, on the FSA side. A lot of times those are workshops and things that happen, maybe at a state level or a regional level. And the cadence of those sometimes is not, maybe not as often as we'd like to have them. But I do know that we've got some, honestly have some incredible experts when it comes to, navigating budgets. How do you build a farm plan from a financial standpoint? And a lot of that assistance is available, and it's simply contacting FSA and asking about what are those services, when are they available, and that sort of thing. But I do think it's important, because we haven't talked about the conservation programs. And we're in a time right now where I think, resiliency is in the conversation, regenerative ag is in the conversation, and I think those are all good things, because I remember when I started farming, and I hate to keep going back to this, but we used to till everything. We thought it had to be black as night before we planted a seed. And obviously, the more we learn, the more we know. And so now for 20 years we've been 100% no-till, and we do cover crops and all that sort of thing. And we've seen results. We've seen results from, if it's dry at home for 30 days, or 40 days, that used to be detrimental. Now, certainly with advancements in seed technology and all that, that's part of it. But I think the other part of it is resiliency and the way we're managing our farms, the way we're managing our soils. And so for a new and beginning farmer, I think they're probably ahead of the curve because they've been studying these things and they've been certainly hearing about them and learning about them and probably, probably took coursework in school to understand these things. So when they start, they're starting at a place that's probably certainly advanced from where I was back in the early 80s. But certainly that conservation piece, whether that's EQIP, CSP, RCPP programs that offer significant financial assistance to implement cover crops, to implement no-till, implement soil health improvement practices. And there are provisions there that actually give new and beginning farmers a little bit of a leg up. If that new and beginning farmer, I'm jumping around here a little bit from conservation to some other programs. But for example, if that new and beginning farmer is operating a dairy and they subscribe to the dairy margin coverage program, they don't have to pay the administrative fee. There are literally things scattered throughout the programs that we offer, throughout the agencies that are within this mission area that literally point a spotlight on new and beginning farmers to support them in a way that I know historically has not been the case.
Undersecretary, thank you so much for joining us today. As we're wrapping up this conversation, what advice do you have to new and beginning farmers as a farmer yourself in your position now, to maybe take advantage of these programs, to offer some type of support, maybe in some of those areas where they may be struggling?
Yeah, obviously, we have a lot of resources, USDA at USDA. There's a lot of different ways to find that. I mean, obviously, our new and beginning farmers they know how to search the web, and so for whatever question you have, certainly, an internet search is going to get you to a lot of good places from information standpoint. That to describe and to explain the programs that are available through USDA. And so from that standpoint, I would encourage, again, research, and another opportunity to educate yourself about what's available. When I do talk to young farmers, they actually will bring up a program that maybe I was just a little bit aware of that was really important to them. And so again, I think that research and that education is critical, because we've got a lot of things that help support new and beginning farmers, really no matter what kind of agriculture they're in. We know we've talked about crop agriculture and livestock, but certainly specialty crops, and other types of agriculture that are available. And we talked a little bit about disaster programs, but again, I think those are important too. And if I had any advice, I would say that, continue to have that passion for agriculture, continue to look for opportunities, frankly. And maybe those opportunities exist in a way that you hadn't thought about. So I think keep your eyes open, really keep a positive attitude. There probably has to be a little patience in there as well. But if you want to do it, you'll do it. It might not just on the front end, it may not look like you think it's going to look. But having just had a significant birthday a couple of months ago, I would say the patience piece, which a lot of folks don't want to hear that, but the patience piece might be the most important one.
No, Mr. Undersecretary, thank you so much for being with us this week.
Kellan, Erin, thank you. This has been fun, and certainly enjoyed it. But if you want to talk again, I'm more than happy to do that.
Awesome. We'll probably have to take you up on that offer. So
Okay.
thanks again. Richard Fordyce, the USDA Under Secretary for Farm Production and Conservation, with us this week. Thanks for tuning in. And for Erin Anderson, I'm Kellan Heavican on the Next Gen podcast for Brownfield.